Yo, what do you do during parent-teacher conferences? Especially if the kid is a little. What's going on, folks? It's D. White, founder of JustBlackThoughts.com, and I'm just one black male educator giving you my thoughts. Today's topic is parent communication or family communication with the guardians. All right. I've been through my fair share of really good and not so great parent-teacher conferences, but I want to give you some tips to help you avoid the really high-level, high-stakes parent-teacher conferences. So a couple of things you could do. Remember, I always say this, teachers, we are not the kids' parents or guardians. Sure, we are temporarily their guardians while they're at school, but I want to respect what parents do. As I say to parents, I love your kids until 4 p.m. and I give them back to you. I love them from Monday to Friday and I give them back to you respectfully. So I want to make sure that's clear because I think it's really easy to conflate the two. And I'm looking at teachers when I say this, just have a little bit of respect. And if you are a teacher parent, as in you teach and you are also a parent, I think you can understand what I mean. I don't have any kids just yet. So again, I want to respect what parents do 24/7. It's a 24/7 job. And don't get me wrong, there is some overlap with teaching and parenting, but at the end of the day, I want to respect and I want to invite the parents to be a part of the team, right? We are trying to raise the kid with a village, so to speak. So we want to make sure teachers, we know our place, that we want to support. We don't want to overstep our boundaries in respecting what families offer to their young people, as well as what we contribute to a young person's life for our 8 to 10 hours a day, our 8 to 9 months a year. So some things you can do to be proactive. Make sure you have some early parent communication in the year. Send home a survey, asking, hey, what are some things you notice about your child in terms of their learning? What are some things you know about their health, their mental health? And sure, some of your schools already do that through their counseling, but if you don't, I think it's also a good data to have to send home a survey asking questions about, your kid's learning profile, whether they have an IEP or not, doesn't matter, but asking parents to kind of comment and reflect on their young person's learning style, some of the hangups they've had in the past. It just gives you more insight early on so you know how to best differentiate and work with a young person. Next, whenever a kid does something well, if you have the capacity, send home an email, ask the parents how they want to be communicated with via email or text. And again, if you have the capacity, send home those texts honoring and appreciating the young person, especially if they're a young person who, you already kind of see they have some strong personality traits or maybe some behavioral issues, but just letting the kid know, like, hey, man, thank you for X, Y, and Z, and being specific about the behavior that you're naming and honoring and sending that via text or email. You don't always have to tell the kid because then the kid will start to think of that as an external incentive. But every now and then when you get a chance, just send a text saying, hey, I want to honor this kid and that kid for X, Y, and Z reasons. Excuse me. The tough part is not just focusing on the kids with behavioral issues, but sending those good job texts to parents of kids who've been really, kicking butt in class and working really hard. Even if it's for something as small as like, I really want to appreciate Samantha for taking lead on today's group project. It builds rapport with the parents. It also lets them know that their kid is doing great things. So then if you do have that parent-teacher conference, there's stuff to talk about as well because you've been communicating with the parents. And sure, some teachers err on the side of classroom dojo. I'm not a classroom dojo teacher. No shade, just not my thing. One of the other things you can do early on in the school year, sending it home or a phone call, is asking the parents, what do you want to see in your learner, in your student this year? Where can they grow? What are your expectations as a parent for your teacher and for your young person? Because then that becomes kind of a contractual terms and conditions, and we can use it as a way for metrics, a way data for check-ins, whether it's informal check-ins with your student. Also with those parent-teacher conferences, you have a document with things you've been keeping up with. Hey, parent, you said you expected this. Young person, do you feel like you met that expectation? Young person, you said this was your goal. Do you feel like you met your goal? So if anything, we're trying to be inclusive and invitational to our guardians and our families out there, especially for our students from marginalized places or our students who have learning differences. For all of our students, obviously, but it helps you better tailor your work to support that young person. Another thing you can do when you're in those meetings, all right, I want to be very clear, when you're in those parent-teacher conferences, ask the parents, what have you noticed at home, right? Ask the young person, what have you noticed at school? Be a little bit Socratic. Don't just start naming off things. And if you do speak, ask a question. And if you do have to comment on a kid's behavior or what you've seen, just give observations. Try to reduce suspend judgment, right? So just say, hey, I noticed that when I'm talking at the board, such and such is talking when I'm talking, right? Try to put the blame to the side because people pick up on that. People are really sensitive, especially a parent, because I think based on my experience, I know parents take some of this stuff really personal because, it's their seed, and their seed is a reflection of them in a lot of ways. In some ways, they're not, right? And so just being really empathetic and being kind and conscious of the space and of the people, your audience. So ask questions. You want to solicit and elicit answers from them just so you have a data set. And then when it's your time to talk, you just give observations. And make sure, as you're communicating, dialoguing in those meetings, give observations, talk about expectations, talk about hopes, and talk about what has worked so far. This is now when you start checking in middle of the year, somewhere, in the mid-fall, Christmas break, coming back from Christmas break. What are your goals? And always coming back to the goals and setting new ones and setting new milestones, asking parents and the young person, what are your hopes for this next chunk of time, this next stretch of the year, and using that as follow-up material for when you do see them again. All right. And I want to reiterate this part and make sure you reiterate this to parents. I'm here to support your young person and the family, specifically your young person. All right. Just so that parents walk out of that meeting knowing, okay, the teacher is on our side, right? Even if a kid has been a little testy or difficult to work with, just, again, you want to remind the young person and the parent, I got your back. We're here for your best interest. How can we service that? How can we be of service to make sure your kid is stepping into their higher self and being the best they can be? So why does that matter as a Black male educator to me? Well, I know my parents worked a lot. They worked their butts off to send me through school, and I was a pretty good student. I followed, as my mom would say, I had home training. So I followed instructions. I tried to be obedient. Every now and then I got out of line, and teachers would check me, and I would respect that. So for my parents, I'm speaking on my parents' behalf, so excuse me for that. I think it was really nice when my mom got some positive communication or correspondence with my teachers. I'm one of 4 boys, and I totally remember my older brother's parent-teacher conference that didn't go so great because there wasn't much teacher-parent rapport. And so it felt really antagonistic and adversarial during those meetings, and you could just feel the tension. So I think ways to reduce the tension and to increase the warmth, the growth, the joy is being proactive about communication with parents and trying to celebrate kids for their awesome behaviors, right? I always want to celebrate kids for what they're doing and not shame them or downvalue them for what they're not doing, right? And I don't want to necessarily say, you're not acting like such and such student. That's not fair to them. They're their own person. So if anything, you want a kid to be able to judge themselves based on their values, based on their kind of self-brand, their image, and who they want to become, as opposed to saying, you need to act more like X, Y, and Z. All right, I don't want to play the comparison game. And I think that's really easy to fall into. And when you're talking to parents, like, well, your kid doesn't behave like the other ones. Well, they're unique. The kids are their own people. Now, of course, you want them to follow rules and norms, but just being mindful of that. All right, so those are just my thoughts. Sorry for the long video. I thought I should say it. Again, teachers, we are not our young people's parents. All right, we are a part of the village that has helped supporting those young people, and you want to make sure parents know we are on the same team. All right? You can find me at justblackthoughts.com. My name is D. White. Peace. Hey, it's D. White, founder of justblackthoughts.com. If you haven't done so, hit subscribe on YouTube. Follow me at The Other English Teacher on Instagram and YouTube. Peace.